We'll get into the reasons why I like Jarrett Stidham hires. Stay with me, guys. Rashid Shaheed rushing, Cooper Kupp receiving, and a whole lot more on the conference championship preview with Dan Pizzuta, one of the most, I would say, thorough preview writers in the entire game. So Dan, thanks for joining us. I want to start with the impossible question, but probably the most important question of the entire weekend. How big of a drop-off is there from Bo Nix to Jarrett Stidham?
So I think structurally it's going to be a lot different because of what Bo Nix is able to do, kind of move it around. And that's so much of what this Broncos offense has kind of been based around, is getting him out of the pocket, whether on purpose or not, because he does still like to go from clean pockets and just kind of get out of there and move around a little bit. So I think we will see a little more structure, probably getting the ball out a little quicker. So I think I still trust Sean Payton to open some things up schematically. But I think it is going to look a lot different than in the way that Bo Nix has. Probably a little less explosive down the field, where you're hitting those types of plays that they've been kind of good at, or kind of hit or miss hitting throughout the season. But I think we're going to see a little more concentrated in the middle of the field, probably is the stuff that we'll see just a little more.
Yeah, with Bo Nix, I think his two signatures, maybe his three, it's sack avoidance. I don't think that Jarrett Stidham necessarily has that. You talk about the little bootlegs, and we saw that huge touchdown to Little Jordan Humphrey, and we've seen that tons of times before. That's another little signature that Bo Nix is good at. And then obviously all the scrambling and short yardage rushing that they went to. You're not going to get that with Jarrett Stidham. Why I ask that, though, is the betting market seemed to think that the drop-off is about 6-ish points. That feels kind of extreme to me. The reason why I think that's extreme is Jarrett Stidham's been in this offense for 3 years. Sean Payton went out of his way to sign him on the first day of free agency and then re-signed him to a 2-year contract afterwards. On the flip side, we'll get to Josh McDaniels, but Josh McDaniels also had an affinity for Jarrett Stidham, drafting him in New England and then trading for him when he was with the Raiders. So just some of the top play callers in the game seemed to like Jarrett Stidham. When I went back and watched him, I think he has a very lively arm. I think his decision-making is actually pretty good. He can get a little bit chaotic with his feet, and you'll see him kind of really aggressively step up. And I think his accuracy is pretty hit and miss. You're not going to get crazy athleticism from him. But I do think, on the grand scheme of things, could he be the 32nd best quarterback in the NFL quietly? I would not rule that out. And I think Bo Nix is firmly around quarterback 16 or so, depending on how you want to grade him. So I don't think that the market should have moved this thing 6-ish points. That's my kind of takeaway. I'm not sure if you've seen the Jarrett Stidham preseason film or went back to watch his starts or anything like that.
I did. And there's, if we want to look at the stats, Jarrett Stidham top. Yeah. If you look at EPA per play, I don't want to make too much of EPA per play in the preseason, but of quarterbacks with 30 or more attempts during this past preseason, Jarrett Stidham was first in EPA per play. He had a high success rate. It was, pushing the ball down the field, which is something that you really didn't expect from Stidham when we've seen him in his small samples throughout his career, actually starting in the regular season. But again, there were some there were preseason open receivers, which it's not going to happen in the playoffs in that way. But I think it's a way that I don't think it's going to completely derail the offense in a way where it's going to be some embarrassing shutout. I don't think.
Yeah, he's had 4 career starts, and in those, that's where I thought his kind of feet were kind of maybe a little bit rushed at times and kind of sporadic. But then the preseason, and this is where I'm talking about the Sean Payton development, there was a lot fewer plays where he just kind of wandering, and he was actually staying within the structure and throwing the ball downfield. And there was some pretty wow level throws on the preseason tape. So I don't want to go too crazy here. I would just not be surprised if Sean Payton could find, a couple wrinkles to Marvin Mims and RJ Harvey and those types. And then I do think that Jarrett Stidham can throw the ball to Cortland Sutton enough to kind of keep this one interesting. So this is not some to me, some Patriots layup line, because we'll get to their side of the ball. I do think that there's some Broncos advantages on the defensive line over there. I do think that Jarrett Stidham can hold the line here. Let's continue on with the Denver Broncos, though. Who's he going to be throwing the ball to? Because we got Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis over there. We still don't know about Troy Franklin, hamstring injured, Pat Bryant, and the concussion protocol. Last week, without those guys, it was Marvin Mims and Little Jordan Humphrey, who's actually playing in the slot, even though Marvin Mims is half the size of Little Jordan Humphrey. They're going power slot with Little Jordan Humphrey. Do you see any mismatches between Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Little Jordan Humphrey? I'll even throw in Evan Ingram. I forgot that he was even on the team. Where are you kind of seeing Jarrett Stidham throwing the ball to here?
Yeah, what I'm interested in is what they are going to do in the slot, because I think, Marcus Jones has played very well. He's a very good player, but I think because they have some size there and they are using some big slot guys, whether it's Lil Jordan Humphrey, Cortland Sutton played 20% in the slot last week. That's kind of what I would like to see a little more. And I think that is probably where you're going to be able to take advantage. I don't think you want to be living outside with Jarrett Stidham throwing to Cortland Sutton one-on-one with Christian Gonzalez. That's probably not the right way to live if you're trying to scheme up the easiest way to get production. So I think if you can kind of get some of those bigger bodies in the slot, Marcus Jones is a smaller player. The New England's linebackers have been playing better over the past, especially the past couple weeks in the end of the regular season and especially in the playoffs. But during the regular season, throwing against those guys in coverage, that's where you really got this New England defense. So if they can figure out a way, whether it's Ingram or Sutton, just using those bigger bodies in the middle of the field there coming from the slot, I think that's probably the most targeted area we're going to see.
Yeah, those linebackers are really good against the run, and we'll talk about the Patriots run defense. It's one of the best in the very elite, in the best in the entire league. So I like the Cortland Sutton moving into the slot. I do think that Marcus Jones is one of the guys you can get after. Christian Gonzalez, I think, is a good corner. I don't think that he is like some elite level corner. I think even last week, he was a little bit inconsistent. So I think it's going to be largely a huge Cortland Sutton game. And I think maybe the other big thing here is just how many times are they actually going to pass the ball? Because over the last 2 months after they kind of lost J.K. Dobbins, and when they had Bo Nix, they were top 5 in neutral pass rate, which was pretty shocking because they started out a little bit more balanced. Will they kind of continue that with Jarrett Stidham? I mean, last week, Bo Nix dropped back almost every single play of the game. They only had 10 running back carries here. Do they not trust RJ Harvey? Do they not trust Jaleel McLaughlin? Are they actually going to continue that with Jarrett Stidham? So how do you think the running backs kind of come into play here?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating because this is especially interior part of the defensive line that has just been blowing some stuff up, over the past couple games. So I think it is going to be a tough thing to run. You can, maybe think about some of the screen game and some of the swing passes, but looking up, New England was 5th in EPA per play on throws at or behind the line of scrimmage. And I think that is something that they're going to be, if there's something that New England does really well, it's going to be kind of charging forward. So I think and that's going to be a very hard way to, I think, manufacture some of the production that they want to have. But that even between Bo Nix, what we saw at Jarrett Stidham in the preseason, a lot of throws behind the line of scrimmage. So if they're trying to live that way, I think that's probably where New England would have an advantage of, some of those schemed up type of plays.
Yeah, since week 9, which is kind of the on-off was without J.K. Dobbins, Broncos are 21st in rushing EPA. That's despite having a very good offensive line. We'll see if the center comes back. Wattenberg, he has a shoulder injury. He's eligible to come off of IR. We'll figure out that later. But that would be the 3rd string center against the Milton Williams guys that we're talking about. And the Patriots this year were 3rd in yards per carry allowed to running backs. And Milton Williams playing out of his mind right now. RJ Harvey, I get the sense that Sean Payton doesn't trust RJ Harvey's vision. That was my concern with him as a prospect. Obviously, he's got tons of juice. You'll see him break a bunch of tackles. Sometimes that is as a rusher. He can also run all the way past guys. You can see him in the receiving game. But last week, it was actually Jaleel McLaughlin who was handling almost all of the non-shotgun runs. So if they were going under center to run the ball forward, pistol to run the ball between the tackles, that was actually Jaleel McLaughlin at the expense of RJ Harvey. So I just get the sense that Sean Payton's kind of pigeonholed as if he doesn't trust his running backs right now, are you going to sit there and have Jarrett Stidham, your backup quarterback, throw the ball like crazy at how they did with Bo Nix? I think that's going to be a big thing to figure out. But I agree with you. Milton Williams has been fantastic for the Patriots. The defense right now is fairly healthy. So I think the Broncos aren't going to score a ton of points. Is it a race to 21 or something like that? I do think that they can get to that level of production. I'd be pretty surprised if this was a total meltdown from the Broncos offense. So let's go over to the Patriots side. How do you kind of see Drake May versus this Broncos defense?
Yeah, I mean, after last week, I'm a little
it hasn't been
more hesitant. Yeah, it has. And I mean, I think when you go back and look at it, CJ Stroud had a higher success rate in that game than Drake May did. And when the pressure got there, it got there. And this is a Broncos defense that I think can replicate what what Houston was able to do last week. So if they are able to stay away from that and they can maybe get the ball out, a little quicker and find some ways around that, then I think they're going to have to kind of heavily scheme up against that pressure, because it wasn't a high volume of pressure last week for May. It was about 25%, which is a fairly low rate, especially when you look at how much Houston was bringing. But when you kind of look at when the pressure did get there, it was quick, and it was very, I think, like a 40% pressure to sack rate, which, that's been May's thing really all year, that it is when the pressure does get there, it usually has turned into a sack. So if they can avoid that, that's going to be something New England really needs to do. But, you have Nick Bonito lining up there, like the fastest get off rates in the league are 2 Denver Broncos edge rushers. Uh-oh. So if that is something that is going to keep New England from moving the ball, I think that's also how it's going to be a very similar way to Houston. That's how they stay in the game.
The entire season, the Patriots offense has been so reliant on the downfield passes. And the counter to that is if their rookie linemen are not able to pass protect, can Drake May buy enough time or quickly throw the ball way down the field and let their receivers get under it? Will there be enough time for the two? So the Broncos, without blitzes, they're 4th in pressure rate. Nick Bonito, he's a speed rusher. Will Campbell has been beaten on the outside and then these kind of inside moves. He has not dealt with speed very well. And then also, I think that Will Campbell, just against bull rushes, just gets kind of his chest exposed and kind of gets dropped back a ton. So since his injury, Will Campbell has a 10% pressure rate allowed. That would be 87th out of 98 qualifiers at offensive tackle, according to PFF. So I do think it's a very similar situation, is just like we saw with Will Anderson in the strip sack. And there was other reps where Danielle Hunter was knifing inside and forcing some incompletions for Drake May. I think that's going to be the big storyline here. I think probably the most important player, aside from Drake May on the Patriots offense, I do think is Will Campbell. And I think that Nick Bonito is probably looking pretty forward to this one.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where I think he's held up fairly well on a majority of plays, but when he was getting beat, it was quick and badly, and that's what really screwed up what the Patriots were able to do. And just Denver is a team that's going to be able to do exactly that.
Yeah, and it's not just Bonito. Like, their defensive tackles can get after it as a pass rush as well. Vance Joseph will not do the entire Brian Flores things, but there's definitely some snaps where there's 5 or 6 guys right next to the line of scrimmage there, and you don't know who's coming, who's not. They actually are running a lot of cover 0 blitzes with a lot of man coverage behind it. So it's not just cover 1. They'll bring the whole house out there. Are they going to be prepared for that? It's a lot of single high stuff for the Broncos defense in general. So there are some one-on-one opportunities down the field. The problem is you have to go beat Pat Surtain one-on-one here. So between Kayshon Boutte, Steph Diggs, you can throw out a Kyle Williams or a Pop Douglas or a Hunter Henry. Who do you think is due for a big game, or who's the most important player in the Patriots receiving game?
Yeah, it's going to end up being whoever is sitting outside against Riley Moss. And, Riley Moss does some good things most of the time, but when you're targeted that often because you play across from Patrick
One of the
Surtain,
toughest, this is the Lassiter thing. One of the toughest jobs in football is when you're the corner 2 next to one of the best corner 1s in the league, because they're just not even going to throw the ball Pat Surtain's way.
Yeah, and it ends up being when he gets beat, it's one of those where he gets beat. And those are the big plays. So whether that is going to be, they try to get Boutte over there just because Diggs might be playing in the slot a little more. Whoever I think is going to be ending up against Riley Moss, and the same thing here with the linebackers. I think that's kind of where you can get them in coverage a little bit. So if this is going to be some 12 personnel and you're getting Hunter Henry and more so than Austin Hooper, but I think that's probably a safety net that they should be using a little more, especially if they're going to be worried about that pressure getting home.
Yeah, I think the Hunter Henry shout out is definitely one that makes a lot of sense there. Just the Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga. If you see these players on highlight tapes for their hard hits, usually you can also find them on the highlight tapes of the receiving tight ends against those types. So I do think that Hunter Henry would make sense. They've been playing Diggs and Kayshon a lot more because they haven't had Mac Hollins out there. So both these guys I think are due for some decent sized games here. Steph Diggs have been playing a lot more time in the slot. It's about half of his snaps are now in the slot versus on the perimeter. So I think in general, Steph Diggs is probably going to avoid Pat Surtain. I don't think that Diggs is playing well enough where Surtain's going to shadow him. Surtain largely only plays on the outside, plays both sides there. So I think for the most part, you're going to see a lot of Kayshawn versus Pat Surtain as like the outside player. And then Steph Diggs will probably get a little bit easier of a matchup, sometimes against Riley Moss, sometimes against Jaquan McMillan. But Steph Diggs is kind of, I think, my answer. It's Diggs and Henry more so than Kayshawn. Yards per route run, target rate against single high looks, definitely in Steph Diggs' favor out there. How do you think Steph Diggs has kind of played throughout the year in general? Because sometimes there's like some metrics I'll look at and then he'll be like really high up there, but they haven't really committed to him for most of the season and kind of in a part-time role. But I do wonder if this is one of these games where when push comes to shove, we have to start getting Diggs the ball a lot more.
Yeah, I think he's played really well and has kind of shifted roles. I thought they would use him as a little more of an outside receiver, but he's definitely found more of a home in the slot. And yeah, if you look at yards per route run during the season, he was, a top 10 in there. You missed a little bit of time and again, wasn't a full-time player, but the fact that he has been able to kind of have that chemistry, I think, with Drake May, he's been really good for the role. They've needed him to play. They don't need him to be this outside X receiver who can win. The fact he can win vertically from the slot, I think, does add an element to this offense that has definitely helped them throughout the year. It's probably going to be the big piece in what they use this week, too. Yeah,
I mean, similar situation with Ramondre and Travion Henderson, largely been a rotation, but they're starting to play Ramondre a lot more. So Ramondre had a little bit of an issue in the middle of that game, and Hendo played more. But if you don't count those snaps where Ramondre is on the sideline momentarily, Ramondre is out there for like not a complete bell cow role, but a whole lot of it. And I think I just kind of get it. Ramondre is just so much more decisive than Hendo is right now. And if you're going to run between the tackles, I do think that Hendo kind of just leaves a lot of like potential like 3-4 yard gains on the table just because he doesn't have the size there. So Ramondre's been playing well. I would be pretty surprised if the kind of splits, the snaps kind of switch up here just because Ramondre has been playing so well. How do you think the Patriots are going to use their two backs?
Yeah, I think it also plays a part in the pass protection too, where I think you're still trusting Ramondre Stevenson a little more than you are Travion Henderson. And when the pass rush is such a threat like it was last week, like it probably is going to be again this week, that's where you're relying on the veteran a little more. And to add, that you probably need a little bit higher success rate than kind of the boom and bust type of run too. So I think all of that does favor Stevenson.
It's just weird. Hendo's like could very easily rip off a 50-yard touchdown here and make me look silly, but I just think like there's a reason why Ramondre's playing more. I think the down-to-down consistency to me is not even close. Now, obviously, Hendo makes up for it because he can rip off those 50-yard touchdowns here. But Ramondre Stevenson low-key even popping off in the explosive ability as well. So final score prediction for me, I'm going 20-17. I think it's going to be fairly low scoring, and I'm actually going to go with the Denver Broncos in an upset here. I think that Jarrett Stidham is going to be able to do just enough. Right now, he's only projected for like 12.5 fantasy points over on Underdog Fantasy. I've already taken the higher on that. That feels a little bit low to me. And then I just think that the Broncos defensive line, kind of a big prove it game for Will Campbell, who as a prospect, is he a tackle? Is he a guard? I think games like this one will get to the bottom of that storyline that we talked about 8 months ago. How do you see the final score hanging out here?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go 24-17 New England. I think it'll, like you said, be lower scoring. But I think New England, especially with how the defense has been playing back half of the season into these two playoff weeks, I have a lot more confidence in what that unit can be going against, as much as I don't think there's going to be as much of a drop off, but going against the backup quarterback, I think this defense can definitely hold them down. And I think the offense will do enough to take the lead here. Yeah,
I just hope that this game stays fairly close. Like there's obviously some risk that Jarrett Stidham, it's like, all right, well, they scored 7 points and this game got away from him. I think that he's past that bar, but that's why it was the impossible question to start here. On to I would say maybe the real Super Bowl this year. Rams, Seahawks, the NFC, definitely the better conference this year. This one's expected to be close, less than 3 points in the point spread here. Maybe some rain in the forecast. We're not dealing with like the rest of the country where it's like complete blizzard out there. A little bit of rain in Seattle, not going to hurt anybody here. I'll keep this one open to you. Rams offense, Seahawks offense. What's more interesting to you?
To me, it's the Rams offense, especially.
Let's go there.
Yeah, based on what they did against Seattle in the first two meetings, and then what the Rams have done the past 2 weeks. Like, I've flummoxed, I think, by what Sean McVay has done over the past 2 weeks.
Is it the three tight end stuff? Is that what you're going to go with?
Yeah. Just, and the way it's been used, because they did use it more against Carolina, but it wasn't in, the passing game where you're targeting the middle of the field. If you look at Matthew Stafford's, passing map, against Carolina, all of the plays in the middle of the field worked, but they were force feeding the wide receivers on the outside, and that just didn't make any sense. And then you go to last week, where they had their second highest rate of 11 personnel of the season, and that's probably not something you wanted to do against the defense they were playing. And I think that really took away what they were able to do, and it really stunted. If you want the Bears to be playing their linebackers, and the fact that they had. Not only were they using, nickel, they were sending the defensive backs on blitzes, and those were their most effective defensive plays. And the Rams just didn't change up anything to make the Bears change there. So I'm very interested in what the Rams are going to do, because in the first matchup, they played a little more 13. Actually 36%. And then the second matchup, they played 61% in 13. And that was a much better offensive performance, but that was also the game they lost. So I'm very interested to see how they attack this, because it's something that they had so much success with over the second half of the season, and then have just kind of gotten away from it in these bigger games when it mattered.
I predict very little three tight end sets in this one. I think a lot of it is just Davante Adams being back, and that's the previous matchup against the Seahawks, Adams was not out there. And then that was a huge game in general for the past game. They had no business losing. That game was one of the wildest games of the entire season. But I was looking at it, a lot of the best passing moments in that game were actually the three wide receiver sets where Puka Nacua was just going crazy. I do think that the Nick and Man worry of it all on the Seattle defense is kind of a solve for the three tight ends kind of advantages that they would get against, like you said, where I thought against the Bears, they might lean into it a little bit more. But if they're not going to do it against the Bears backup tight ends or backup linebackers, I would be pretty shocked if they tried to do it with Nick and Man Worry and how much size and speed and physicality that the Seahawks have. So I don't really see the advantage of doing the three tight end stuff. So I'm looking at Colby Parkinson lowers, Davis Allen lowers, Terrence Ferguson lowers. And instead, I kind of want to double down on Puka Nacua, because I do think Puka is just a total mismatch versus the corners. I think the corner play is the worst on the Seahawks defense there. He got Devin Witherspoon down the field once, but it's kind of the outside corner 2 is the spot that I would be looking for. And obviously Sean McVay, just a total master in moving Puka around the formation. So I think more 3 wide receiver sets than 3 tight end sets for the Rams offense here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be super surprised with that. Although I think with the 3 tight ends, where they were just super efficient, they were able to get that, because Seahawks are going to be playing nickel to pretty much everything. And then when they play base, it's not with 3 linebackers. When there's 4 defensive backs on the field, it's usually a 5th defensive lineman. They're usually using a 3rd interior defensive lineman to stop the run. So the Rams haven't had a lot of success running the ball from those 13 personnel sets. But if they do want to kind of get that bigger body mismatch, I think that might be, I would like to see it sprinkled in a little more, because it just kind of seems like they completely went away from it in the playoffs and what was working with them. But yeah, like you said, you're probably going to live and die with what Puka does in this game, just because he is absolutely their most important player.
Yeah, I mean, he went completely crazy in that game last time. Davante Adams, it's been a weird last 6-ish weeks of the season where he was a walking touchdown for the first 12-ish weeks, picked up a couple injuries here and there, and then I think the last couple games since coming back, he's not looked as explosive, and then also just not coming down with as many of these kind of contested catches or just straight up drops recently. So I'm not sure what to make of Davante Adams, that small sample size noise. Is there something to this, or is just the ball going to go to Puka Nacua 17 times in this one regardless? So I'm not sure if you have a good read on what's happening to Davante Adams recently.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like in the Carolina game especially, he just wasn't fully healthy, and then they were forcing him the ball against the part of the Carolina defense that was actually good. So I think that was just that was unforced errors, I think, in a lot of places in the way they just went about it. last week, I think similar, where the Bears outside corners are still pretty good. And that is probably not where you wanted to be attacking their defense. So Seattle is not going to be any easier. But I think, once you get to the red zone, I think they were kind of having a tough time kind of moving the ball into an area where he would be more effective and where he was during the season too. Cause he wasn't exactly the open field guy, during the regular season. So I think with that being a little more condensed, a little harder to get to, throughout the postseason, that's kind of why we haven't seen him completely hit. But then we also see the incredible catch on the sideline. So he still has that in him. So at any given play, he could still be one of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of routes down the field where it feels like he can't fully open up right now coming off that hamstring injury, but you don't have to do that when you're at the 4-yard line. I love the Puka matchups, obviously Matthew Stafford, but to me, like the trenches on this side of the ball, and you mentioned it, where if they do bring in 3 tight ends, they're going to bring in that 5th defensive lineman because they have so much depth over there. Here's what I want you guys to do. When the ball is snapped, when the Rams have it, watch Byron Murphy, 91. He's kind of like a nose tackle. He's going to be rushing the A-gap. And Leonard Williams. They're usually right next to each other. Those two guys against Kevin Dotson, who was awesome this last week, coming back from injury there. Those 3 guys, kind of like this little triangle here. Kevin Dotson, Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams. These are 3 absolute monsters. For the first 2 seconds of the play, please lock into those guys. But the Seattle Seahawks defense against the run has been fantastic, number 1 in success rate. But the Rams have also been number 1 in success rate running the ball themselves. So something's got to give here. One of these sides of the ball, one of these trenches is going to really come up to play here. Do you have a lean on how the ground game's gonna shake out here? Because both of them have been fantastic.
Yeah, when you kind of look at what the Rams have been able to do, 26% success rate rushing the ball in week 11. It went up to 46 in week 16 when they were able to do it. So they've shown both throughout the season in these regular season matchups where they just weren't able to do anything. But I think with Dotson back, I think they will have a little more success with it. Yeah, it's been very big the way they're able to, I think, have a full complement of what their offensive line wants to be. So I think they'll be able to have a little success with it, but I think this is going to be a game where they're going to have to use that to complement the passing game, because I think the passing game is still going to be where this game ends up. If they can get some explosives and move the ball that way, then it's going to work. I don't think they're going to be able to rely on the run game and kind of run it down other teams' throats like they have been able to do to some other teams during the regular season.
Yeah, I think even last week, the rushing success rate was still in the 90s percentile for the Rams, and that's kind of why they was able to squeak by and win that game. I don't think that's going to be the recipe here. I do think it's going to largely come back to Stafford and Puka, because I think what you said, 46 percentile, that's lower than what the Rams have been at. I think that's as most as you're going to get on the Seattle Seahawks. So they're at 33% rushing success rate allowed to the running back. So that's going to be huge there. Bunch of studs on the Seahawks defensive line, but Kevin Dotson is a stone cold monster himself. So I think that's going to be pretty fascinating there. All right, Seahawks offense here. Sam Darnold, this is the don't get fooled, that's where that's kind of how this thing goes. I wanted to quickly just hit on the Rams defensive kind of scheme in general. 6th lowest blitz rate across the season, so they don't bring a lot of pressure, but they're 3rd highest in simulated pressure rate, and they have the most defensive line stunts in the NFL. So they're creating havoc, but they're always keeping 7 in coverage. I kind of really like this theory here. So you're almost dead last in blitz rate, but lots of simulated pressures, lots of stunts in general. Sam Darnold had that pick going into the end zone where a defensive lineman drops into coverage, so you can kind of get funky there. Sam Darnold, are you going to get fooled with this one? 3rd time against this opponent here. How do you kind of see Sam playing?
Yeah, that was going to be where I come in. Is he going to be able to recognize what's happening post snap and not put the ball in danger? Because that's when the games have turned, especially in these 2 matchups. So if he is able to not just get fooled by what they're doing, and I'm sure the Rams are going to bring everything that they have in this game. So I think we'll see, we've seen a lot of, the nose tackle dropping out into coverage. That's what he got him the last time. We'll see a couple things like that. I think we'll see a lot of different changes coming in here. So if they can, I think, be safe with the ball, I think obviously Charbonnet being out is going to be tough, because I think they will try to have the run game, I think, at least get some of this early down success rate, at least move the ball a little bit to get into, third and manageable, not have this be a, Sam Darnold straight drop back game.
Yeah, but that's a hard part with Kenneth Walker, is like he's a explosive or kind of a boom bust rusher. And I think some of that's just because the offensive line isn't that great. The backup running back without Charbonnet is Velus Jones, who's a wide receiver, and like they don't trust him at all. He barely played after Charbonnet left there. So there's going to be a bunch of Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is pretty much brutal in pass protection. So it's not like there's a bunch of like blitzes that he has to kind of worry about here, but just in general, that is going to be a little bit of a weakness. Another one of his interceptions it looked like it was going to be cover 1, and then they got into cover 2. And Sam just threw it right to, I think, the linebacker slot player, and that was an interception. So you're going to see the Rams just change the coverages after the snap. Sam Darnold, are you going to get fooled? I do think, even let's say he has an interception or 2 here, hopefully it's not 3 or 4, like we've seen Sam Darnold kind of just like completely get spooked out there. I do think that his arm talent right now and the way JSN's playing, and then on the flip side, how bad the Rams corners have been playing, I do think Sam Darnold, passing yards wise, is going to be able to get home. I still think that he throws one of the best kind of just like whole shot passes in the entire league. I don't think that there's a Rams corner that can guard JSN right now. So I do think that the Seahawks are going to be able to move the ball through the air, whether that's JSN, Cooper Kupp, or Rashid Shaheed. But it just comes down to how many interceptions is Darnold going to throw here.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game where they try to keep it safe in a way where he's throwing the ball quickly and kind of short. And in the short area, I think in the 2 games against the Rams, 64% of his passes were between 1 10 air yards. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's a way where, even if it's just, short passes to the outside where you're still working, JSN against the outside cornerbacks, is probably a way to do it. The slot coverage has been tough for the Rams. I mean, Quentin Lake was so good during the first half of the season. Then he got hurt and just hasn't been the same player since he came back. And I think the Seahawks could take advantage of that. I mean, Cooper Kupp had the highest target share last week. So if they need to be going to that too, I think they do have answers in the passing game if they are able to, keep Darnold one upright and, from making some dangerous throws.
I think Cooper Kupp is like low key somebody to watch. I've been playing the Cooper Kupp hires. Actually, I think it's like 2.5 receptions. I do think where the Rams offense goes crazy and the Seahawks are forced into passing the ball more. That's a way that Cooper Kupp can get home. But also, the Rams just play a bunch of zone, and that's the only way Cooper Kupp's getting the ball right now. But he also has a lot of familiarity. He's only spent his entire career against or on the Rams side there. So I do think that Cooper Kupp makes a lot of sense. 77% of the routes last week. Wanted to quickly hit on Rashid Shaheed. He's up to 70% of the routes. They did use Rashid Shaheed as a running back for a couple snaps after the Charbonnet injury. And he's like, what's the difference between him and Velus Jones at this point? They're both just like kind of making stuff up as running backs out there. So I do think that Rashid Shaheed, if you can find rushing yards, like that type of stuff, I think that's how they're getting the Rashid Shaheed return on trade investment there as a special teamer. And then also some of the manufactured touches. And then obviously Shaheed, we've been waiting for like a 60-yard touchdown through the air for him. I do think this could be an option down the field there, just because the corners they have not just been playing very well over there. Last thing I just want to hit on, going back to Kenneth Walker, and just the ground game. The Rams defensive line is fantastic. They go 5 deep. They got 3 defensive tackles. They got 2 stud edge rushers there. The Seahawks, their offensive line really comes and goes. Their left tackle's dealing with an injury. Their right guard's been really bad. They hit on their first round left guard there, but I think in general, I would probably lean Rams defensive line has the definite advantage over the Seahawks offensive line. How do you see it?
Yeah, I would say that too. I mean, they had a little more success in that second game, especially late in the second half when they were able to, they had some bigger plays that they got off. I think it was the Shaheed, the 31-yard run was their best play in that, in the second game.
I can see that here. Like screw defensive tackles. Like Rashid G did the perimeter, and
that's probably how they're going to have to manufacture some touches on the ground there, just to get some mix ups and just kind of movement around the defensive line. First game, it's 33% success rate on the ground, which is going to be tough. And I think we'll probably see something closer to that. And then hopefully just trying to create some of those bigger plays, a Shaheed end around or probably maybe some Cooper Cup, motion, into some touches, some jet sweeps or something like that. Probably we'll see a little more just to kind of make those look a little different, because I think just some of the straight run game might be a little tougher to do when you're relying on Kenneth Walker for probably 90% of the touches.
Yeah, I think it will be 90% of the touches for Kenneth Walker. They can throw him the ball, like get him out in space. He can catch the football, even though he doesn't play that many pass protection snaps. They could get him on some ways to the perimeter, because I do think they have enough speed to kind of beat the light boxes. And I think a little bit slower linebackers over there as well. So I do think that whether it's Shaheed in the backfield or Kenneth Walker out in space, I do think that's going to be the better way to move the ball, because running on the interior, I just don't see the matchups there for the Seahawks in general. So how I'm going to break the tie here, and I got this one 28-27 Seahawks. The Seahawks have one of the best special teams units in like DVOA history. And like that wasn't before Rashid Shaheed took the first play of last week to the house. So I'm going to break it at home here. The crowd noise is going to go crazy. The special team's going to make a big play. I'm going to break the tie here because I do think this is a very even matchup in general. I'm going to go with Seahawks 28, Rams 27.
Yeah, it's probably the way I'm leaning to. Special teams is going to be big here. Not only is Seattle really good on special teams, the Rams are terrible on special teams. So that has been a big piece of both of these teams throughout the season. I do weirdly feel better about the Rams after I said I didn't like what they've done the past two games, but because I think they know how to play the Seahawks, it'll be, I think, a little closer than it would be otherwise. I'm going to say probably 28-24 Seattle, but this is a game where I'm not going to be surprised by whatever the result is.
Yeah, I do think that this one, if I was like saying anything, I do think that Rams Seahawks should be even closer in point spread, is 2.5. Like obviously there's only so many games where you win by a point or 2 points, but I think this one's pretty close to a toss up here. There's gonna be maybe a little bit of rain here, but I think both teams are used to that enough. And this one's just gonna be a total banger. Do you think that like whoever wins this game, will they be 5-7 point favorites in the Super Bowl against the AFC? Like, especially if it's like Jarrett Stidham like wins this one, they'll be like closer to 7 to 10 point favorites. Like, how much of this is the real Super Bowl on the NFC conference versus the actual Super Bowl?
Yeah, it does feel like that probably is what it's going to be. I mean, especially when you look at like DVOA and what the Rams and Seahawks have been throughout the season.
Yeah.
They were very close, 1 and 2 for a very long time, and big gap to number 3. Seahawks have, if you add in the playoffs, Seahawks have moved up a little bit, but these are two teams that have been much better than especially New England and Denver throughout the year. So if this is whichever Super Bowl matchup this is going to be, I would expect the NFC team to be highly favored. Yeah,
definitely. So the Rams have been the best early down team in the league by far. And then the Seahawks have been fantastic on late downs. So that's another little kind of storyline to pay attention is the Rams, when on early downs, could they push the pile enough to keep Matthew Stafford upright? Because the pass rush will be getting home a little bit there. But yeah, it's going to be a total banger. Dan, you've been writing a ton on previews. You are just an excellent writer. I did want to just open the floor to you. You're just talking about off-season preview in general. Is there any kind of big storylines that people are missing out there? Are there trade candidates? Is there a couple teams that really stick out? How would you grade the free agency class? Anything like this, like whatever you want to talk about preview wise, hit me, because I'm going to start doing my own research here in the next couple weeks, but you've already done a lot of it for me. Yeah,
there's a couple things. I mean, the free agency class, it feels like we're never really going to get a good free agency class ever again, because good players just aren't going to hit the market in a way. The one class I am interested in is safety. That seems like it's still the one position around the league where teams don't really want to pay up for that position, they're not going out of their way to extend these guys, and you can still get some pretty good guys on cheap deals. I think we're looking at like Cam Curl. If you look at what he's doing with the Rams right now, like 2 years ago, he was sitting around in free agency, signed for 2 years and $9 million. So like you can still get those types of players for that type of deal. So I think like when I'm looking, Jaquan Brisker is going to be a free agent. It's like guys like that who can absolutely like change what you're able to do on a defense. Free agency wise, looking at that, I think there are some pretty interesting teams here. Like you look at the Chargers, what they're going to do. Coming in with Mike McDaniel, offensive coordinator, like first of all, that's awesome. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to look a lot different than it did in Miami, because I think he just like hyper specifically tailored that offense to the quarterback, what they had. But I think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff. He designs a very good run game. I think a lot of people forget that he was the run game coordinator.
That's where he's best at.
In San Francisco.
Yeah.
And just because of what all the open downfield and the speed at wide receiver, I think a lot of people like don't think of him in the run game. But he's had some fun run things. They have the second most cap space in the league. Free agency wise, like, if a Tyler Linderbaum gets into free agency, and a player like that who is a free agent because they declined his 5th-year option because he's a center, and that tag price is all offensive linemen, so he'd be the highest paid center by like $5 million a year.
They need to change that rule, by the way. We have to get to the specifics of these positions, man. Like, this is ridiculous.
So much. It's not a big enough problem where anyone who makes those decisions really cares, but we do see this like every couple of years where there is a guy, whether it's making a Pro Bowl or something, where it's defensive ends and outside linebackers are like different but the same position. It absolutely just could easily be fixed, but I don't think anyone cares enough to really make that something that they look at. But they have the second most cap space in the league, where I think they can really change some things, improve that interior offensive line. And then you get that with the McDaniel run game and some of the things that can open up, be really exciting. In Tennessee, I'm also interested in, because this is pretty much a blank slate. You have Cam Ward, you have Jeffrey Simmons. That's about it. But they also have the most cap space, so I think they can just kind of be an open slate there. There are a couple other teams where it's going to be interesting, like the Chiefs are going to have a lot of moves to consider, just because not a lot of the cap space and trying to just kind of figure out what this team looks like. The Bills are going to be the same.
Bills, I think, are in a little bit of trouble, just cap space wise. Obviously, they can restructure a contract, but they're losing a lot of free agents, and a lot of them are at like the pillar positions, like offensive line, defensive line, and not to mention they're obviously going to have to address wide receiver, because Keon Coleman's trade block that's probably hitting the line at any moment now. Yeah,
you would think so. I mean, between Josh Allen, probably Deion Dawkins, you can free up about like $20 million in cap space just from restructures. Spencer Brown too. So I think between those three, you'll get there. But there are teams like that where it is going to be a little tougher. And I'm just trying to look at some of the other
Dan, just real quick, I think that your kind of big picture here, the like low end positions that don't require the most money, those are the best players that kind of hit the market. Center, safety, running back, sometimes tight end. Those are like the guys that kind of get away, where you need to draft the premier positions. And then I think you can sign a guard or two, and you can find a safety, you can find a running back on the market for cheap. And I think teams are kind of understanding that too. And then sometimes these guys can kind of walk. So I don't think it's a good way to like kind of build your team through free agency, but I do think that you can go from like an average team to a very good team just by hitting some of these kind of underrated players. And Linderbaum being the Aaron Brewer for McDaniel, the Chargers, would be completely lights out. So I just think in general, it's like the unheralded positions are the best spots to go hunting for free agency. Yeah. And, the past 2 years when I was at the 33rd team, I did the top 100 free agents, and that was just the takeaway all the time. If you're looking, you could probably, get some linebackers and get some just spine of the defense type of places that really matter, but just aren't the premium positions pay wise. And you have some of these, veteran teams that are in a cap crunch because of, some of these quarterbacks and what they're paying at some of the other,
so-called premium positions where the good players can get to the market, and that's where they are. Like, it doesn't even need to be a Tyler Linderbaum. Like you said, Aaron Brewer completely changed what the Dolphins were able to do as a free agent, and I don't think we would say, he was a premier free agent last year. So it is, those types of positions are really where you should be hunting free agency. What can definitely change a team, and then you're draft a wide receiver every year. Like, it's you should be.
Low-key, you can kind of draft receivers in like rounds 2 through 5 at this point. Like, a lot of the best wide receivers in the league are kind of in that range now. Obviously, it helps to have one of those demons in the first round. But last takeaway for me, looking at this, over the cap, you can just look at the biggest cap space. And obviously, there's restructures that take place, so it's not the perfect measure. But on the surface right now, the Seahawks are top 5 in cap space. And then you look at their pending free agents, it's not a whole lot of really good players. Like, this Seahawks team is fantastic. They don't lose anybody really next year, and they have a bunch of money to kind of spend on top of that. So this is like one of these teams where it's like, damn, like they are in a excellent spot, not just for this year, obviously, as they look to the Super Bowl, perhaps, but also like next year, they're going to be able to bring in some talent. They're really not going to lose all that much.
Yeah, I mean, they'll take some, because the second corner and safety is probably what they'll have to decide who they want to keep. Reek Woolen's going to be a free agent. The Kobe Bryant and Ty Okada are all free agents, guys who have played some big roles here. But I think you can, sign one or two of those guys and still have a significant portion of your cap space still left. So yeah, they are a very interesting team. For Yahoo, that preview will be up once they're eliminated, whether that's, this week or after the Super Bowl. I have all the teams that are not still alive are up on Yahoo right now. We're going into got cap space, got who can be restructured, who might be cut to be moving around. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun looking into some of that stuff.
Yeah, please go read that. It's excellent work over on Yahoo. All the teams are going to be linked in the description here. And I think a lot of people don't get the restructuring of contracts correct. It's even, I'm not an expert with that, and I really try to study hard for it. So Dan has us covered. Also, like, don't get carried away here just on the free agency list that you guys see. Like, I'm sure Dan's already said, like, the Cowboys are going to keep George Pickens. Kyle Pitts is probably going to get franchise tagged. So, like, a lot of the top 10 lists that you'll see by position here are going to include a lot of guys that are not leaving the building. So Dan will have us covered there on the preview stuff. It's really truly fantastic stuff. So, like, please go check those out on Yahoo. Please follow him on the socials as well. Dan, thanks for joining us. And hopefully we get a really good game from the Seahawks Rams, because I think this is the game of the year, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And thanks for having me on. Also, plug the Underdog newsletter, which I've been writing every week. So yeah, it's been a fun thing to do too.
Yeah, Underdog newsletter. Just check your email over there. Sometimes I have some writing over there, and then obviously with the news team and Dan, there's tons going on over there. So there's more content on Underdog than I'm even aware of. Sometimes it's so hard to follow. There's so many people joining us, but that's a great shout out over there. Newsletter. Check your emails. All right, with that, promo code the show. Let's get out of here. I submitted a little pick-em entry if you guys want to tail me a little 3-piece set for you guys out there. Good luck this week, and I'll see you with Davis Maddock tomorrow. Top 20 overall fantasy players for next year. Peace.